Hello, this is Positive Vibes Enterprise. I'm Tom Goodwin, and this is Michelle Ronquillo.
Hello, everybody.
And the subject today has to do with crisis. And the reason we chose the subject of crisis is because often, if you're starting a new movement like Positive Vibes Enterprise is doing, you need conditions where people see the need for spiritual growth, see the need for spiritual transformation. They aren't so satisfied with the status quo because the status quo is not working well enough. So a lot of times, and crises happen all the time. They're always happening. So it's not like you have to wait that long in this modern world with all the serious problems. Crises are going to happen, and a lot of times crises are opportunities, and that's what a lot of people will. That's a pretty popular way of saying it. A lot of people believe that, and I do.
Yeah, in society, when a tragedy or a crisis happens, it's kind of like a wake up call, a spiritual type of push for people to change their habits. It's very comfortable in the everyday routines that we get into that, sometimes if you're very strong spiritually, you can manifest change in your everyday habits and routines without a crisis. However, there's a big majority that until crisis rings your bell spiritually, you're not really aware of the changes that are really needed in your life.
And people get comfortable with the familiar.
Yes.
And in this world, you'll notice that in different countries, different traditional spiritual beliefs or religions tend to dominate. In other words, people just, whatever they grew up on, they tend to stay with. It's almost like that's
Right.
familiar. They get an attachment to it. There's all these ceremonies and things that come along with it. And it's hard. Spiritual growth is not easy because you have to, the spiritual runs deep within you. It takes a lot of intensity to change something that's so deeply embedded.
Right, exactly. And the habitual need for the daily practices of things that are new in the spiritual developments take strong mental abilities to keep those focuses on what you're trying to do.
So often a crisis is what is required in order for a lot of people to get the desire to change and the need to change, because to get outside their comfort zone, they say, well, the familiar is not so comfortable anymore, so I have to go in a direction that's not so comfortable, because what choice do I have? And survival has this kind of effect where you say, it makes you do what you have to do, and it makes you willing to explore new things because you feel you have no choice.
Yeah, and unfortunately, you need to break through the perception that even when crisis happens and you're kind of forced in a spiritual direction to take change, to embrace it, because always when you get into the habit of spiritual change, then you'll want to embrace change without crisis happening. But in crisis, you need to let go of the fact that you're being forced and you're being open to a new opportunity to show your spiritual strength.
And a lot of times in my life, I saw, that crisis was most likely going to happen in my future if I didn't make sure I was doing everything to be prepared for what was going to happen. Meaning when you see that you don't have a lot of possibilities in life and you see a lot of things that are working against you, you can see what is over the horizon for you, and you can become proactive and say, I'm going to train and be ready for what I know is going to happen.
Right, because in tragedy becomes the perception of victimization, or being victimized, and you have to overcome that feeling of you being a victim. You're not a victim. You're in a spiritual training move of the universe that needs you to grow and expand, and crisis is that push that sometimes is needed in life.
In our advanced technological age, we have a lot more serious problems than we've ever had in the history of humanity.
Yes.
And we have to become more mature spiritually. You have to grow. But the thing is, people don't a lot of times understand how serious the problems are.
True.
Just from listening to people talk about it. They almost have to experience it, and that's where crises come in.
Right.
Where all of a sudden they say, oh, these people were talking about it, and now look what happened. They were right. And then it dawns on you, well, I guess I'm going to have to do something about this problem. And if I have a problem spiritually dealing with it, maybe I need to develop myself a little better spiritually so that I can up my game, so to speak.
Right, because it's always the passion. Because once somebody is experiencing exactly what that crisis is representing, then they feel the passion and the need to be involved in the motion of healing in the spiritual sense.
And often during a crisis, like when Franklin Roosevelt had his crisis, what the politicians will do, or the leaders will do, is they'll try everything they can possibly think of. They'll try this, they'll try that. And if it doesn't work, they'll switch to trying another thing. And that's the way you do in an emergency. You do that trial and error, and you do it very rapidly, because you say, I got to figure this out. I got to figure it out fast. We have to do something. Let's try this. Oh, that's not going to work. We'll try this. No, that's not going to work. And then you get in a mindset that's very good for spiritual growth, where you're willing to try different things and see what actually works the best, rather than just saying, oh, I brought up on this and I'm going to stick to this because I'm familiar with it. What you're saying is the familiar doesn't work anymore because the crisis is too much for the familiar. So I'm going to go into try other things, and I'm going to see what works the best in helping me get through this very trying time I'm going through.
Right, and the world is in this type of pre-crisis spiritual energy, where it is time for all the shakeup to happen, for people to come out and show their spiritual strength of different results that we can grow as a community and a society.
And Positive Vibes Enterprise is very much into better spiritual techniques and theories and approaches, because that's what I've developed, and sort of like pushing it through this organization, the 30 years of effort I've put into, and trying to develop things that are better, thinking outside the box, trying things that I know nobody else is trying and nobody else would try, because that's what you have to do. You have to have the mindset, I'm going to try things that other people will not try, and I'm going to go places spiritually other people will not go, and I'm going to figure out how to do it. And in a crisis, when you're an explorer, you're in a constant crisis state. And what happens when you're used to dealing with crisis is you get very good at dealing with crisis. You get very good at turning corners on a dime when you have to in order to survive. And that's what makes you develop very fast spiritually, is having that type of approach where you are willing to put yourself out there in a direction where you're going to run into crises, because you really don't know what you're doing, and that's how you learn how to deal with the unknown, is by doing that trial and error and figuring it out, and being able to handle the fact that when you deal with the unknown, you're going to run into crisis after crisis after crisis. That just comes with it.
Yeah, and the control, though, this is the thing, the spiritual control that it takes in crisis is the adrenaline rush that's coming through. That survival, that fight or flight, that chemistry in your body that is literally telling you to start fighting, putting all the blood into the muscles so then the muscles and the body can fight for its life. And so understanding the spiritual connections and the spiritual control it takes in crisis, so you don't overreact and you keep your composure and you keep your control, and you can understand that in crisis we need these level-headed, calm and spiritually knowledgeable people, leaders, that can help with the results that are reality-based results.
In order to effectively deal with a serious problem, you have to be able to handle the emotions that come with the problem. And and of course the spiritual is powered by emotions. And so that's what the spiritual is all about, becoming a master of your emotions, be able to handle the hardest and roughest emotions that one can possibly handle, so that one can handle the roughest and hardest problems that one can handle.
And understanding that emotion is out of control. It's spiritual, but it's chaos. It doesn't have a reality-based sense until you put the intellect into the emotion. You balance it spiritually with the intellect, which brings a balanced understanding of control of the emotional state.
And emotions are linked to desires, and often people have desires that work against their survival. But of course, when you're in survival mode, a lot of times you're not going to be thinking about the petty desires that often that they're petty when you're dealing with a lot of serious stuff. But when you're in an easy time, a lot of times people just just fall into these, numbing themselves with overdose of all kinds of desires and creature functions. And in a crisis, you just say, well, I can't be worried about whether I can get my bacon or my ice cream or something. I have to survive, and that's what counts right now.
Yes, exactly. You need to grab on to the spiritual control and the perceptions that are going to move you forward into the results logically and healthy.
And we're not really fooling around with Positive Vibes Enterprise. We're trying to get to do something of a very serious nature in this world. And you're dealing with very serious people that have put a lot of effort into the spiritual. And we're trying to spread the knowledge that we have developed to the world. And you may say, well, who are you to say you can spread better spiritual knowledge? And what I would say is try it and see if it worked. In other words, don't be so quick to dismiss something without trying it. Because there are people that are different, that do develop new things. And when you have that attitude, just because most of the people that are claiming to be able to do things are nutty, you don't throw everybody out, because then you never get any innovation. You'll never get anything new. Everybody that has developed anything of any value in this world to change this world has been considered a little bit nutty. Has been a little bit out of, outside the box. But when people have tried what they've come up with, they've looked into it, and then they found this is really good.
Yeah, like, wow, it's transformation. And you know what? Another thing spiritually is the habitual. It has to be a habit. It has to be daily. It has to be a push. It has to be those tough people that in crisis is still going to push and do it and make no excuses of why we need to stop or take a break or have some numbing energies that are going to just take away the hurtful, painful things of life. That's there. That's always going to be there. But when you have an attitude of toughness in the spiritual sense, you're going to survive. You're going to push through. You're not going to let those excuses stop you. You're going to keep going and going and going. And those are the types of people that we need to find and that need to say, hey, we're in it together.
Yeah, we're basically, we realize that when you're dealing with new spiritual theories and things that are challenging to people, that a lot of people will not be interested in it at the beginning, because most people are not open to things that are new and challenging. So we have to reach the few people that are open, that see the need, that are connected with the problems of this world to the point that they will look at all the options, all the possibilities, and won't be afraid to look at possibilities that come from people that are different or unusual in some way.
And you know what? They'll push those spiritual energies of willpower, because that's really where it lies down. Do you have the willpower? Do you have the strength? Do you have the spiritual strength to start something and then finish it through? And do you have the willpower to try something new, to see if it works for you spiritually, to see if you are that spiritual leader that you always knew you felt you were, because you are? And you have that confidence, you decide to try something new to build that confidence and bring the greatest part out of you.
Because new ideas do not have a lot of psychic support in the world. So it's not easy for new ideas to take off.
Yeah, you need that confidence. And
so that's why they have a tendency, you have to, first a few people have to try it. The types of people that have the character that are willing to try it.
That's right.
And then once they try it, they're the type of people that can influence other people because they're strong characters. And then the influence will grow. And as more people are into these new ideas, new theories, and new approaches, it will grow faster as more and more people build up the energy. Because just like if the number of believers has a very strong impact on the energy of a movement. The more you get into it, the stronger the energy, spiritual energy field comes, and the more it can spread even further. So it's our thought, it's sort of does a thing exponentially, where it just goes bigger and bigger and bigger. But the hardest part is starting and going against the resistant energy that's out there that says, how dare you do that? How dare you try something new?
And we're always going to get resistant energy. We always, and if you look at it in your spiritual sense of confirmations in your life, you get that resistant energy trying to stop you from doing things that you know is right. It's always that harder walk. That's the spiritual. It's the ones that really push to fight through that resistance and say, no, I'm going to do this. This is going to be a achieved goal for me. Those are the spiritual.
And the bigger the resistance to needed change, the bigger the crisis that will result. Because the crisis will be as big as required to overcome the resistance. So therefore, if you notice that we have a lot of things that aren't going so well in this world, that's because people aren't willing to mobilize their energy to find the practical solutions and to apply, to act on them. People aren't willing yet, and that has a lot to do with you know, how strong they are spiritually, because everything starts from within.
Well, and also in the crisis situation, we need to remember that we need to reach out into groups and join forces and support, and that's where you get everybody with the protesting going on. But we need to pull in the reality-based types of thinking, the spiritual things that are actually going to make results, instead of focusing on the chaotic type of energy and the unknown energies of what to do. We know there's something that we need to do, but we need to pull in the spiritual energies of how to do it with the results in a reality-based sense.
And we are very much into working with other people.
Yes.
We have that type of crisis type approach where we use trial and error, and we try to figure out what will work the best in changing the real and serious problems that are in the real world. We aren't pie in the sky spirituality. We're down to earth practical spirituality that's into concrete, solid results and deal with the serious problems that exist in this world.
Yes.
This is Positive Vibes Enterprise. The subject today had to do with crisis. Thank you very much for watching.
Yes, please leave us any quotes, any comments that you have, and please subscribe. And thank you for everyone that has subscribed. Yay!
We appreciate it very much.